Welcome to Media Thread, the series where I cover my favorite media texts of the year and rank them as they appear. This time it's Arcane Season 2, which was sure to make it, but does it reach the heights that Season 1 saw? The answer is no, unfortunately. 3 years ago, Arcane Season 1 shocked the world by how incredible it was despite being a video game adaptation. Those are notorious for being bad, but then again, they have gotten better in recent years, with the likes of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, The Last of Us, and Fallout. Still, they don't reach the sheer level of quality that Arcane has showcased, which is truly one of the best TV shows ever created, animated or otherwise. I love Season 1, so I was immensely excited for Season 2, and although it was a painful 3-year-long wait, it was necessary so that Fortiche could cook with even better art and animation. Everything looks insanely good, even better than Season 1's already 10 out of 10 visuals, and I love the variety of art styles. I have complete faith in Fortiche's capabilities, and they did not disappoint whatsoever. I was more worried about whether the writing would be able to live up to the incredible standard that Season 1 set. Not that I mistrust the Arcane writers, they also proved themselves with Season 1, but it seems like it's more common for the writing of a work to lose its quality than the visuals. Unfortunately, this second season does prove that, as the writing doesn't hold a candle to Season 1. It's overall still really good, and some scenes are exceptional, but there are quite a few flaws, and most of them exist because the pacing is rushed. The season started relatively well, even if the season premiere is by no means one of my favorite Arcane episodes. I was of course looking forward to the aftermath of that insane cliffhanger Season 1 left me on, and it was a really good opening scene, but maybe it felt a little underwhelming considering the long wait. The funeral scene of Kate's mom is quite beautiful, and the Mad Lads at Fortiche animated it entirely with charcoal. I'm astounded by how good it looks. The action scene towards the end was also really good, but I was clamoring to see Jinx and the Undercity. That's where episode 2 said, "I got you fam," immediately opening with a Jinx scene, one that topped any scene from the first episode. Her burying Silco was so heartbreaking to watch, and it's poetic that it takes place in the same waters Silco nearly drowned in, as well as where he baptized Jinx. The sucker scene is a banger too, showing the power struggle of Son in a cool music video. This is where the little girl Isha comes in, who I didn't care for at first, but she left a pretty strong impression on me in the end. I love the fight between Savika and Smeech. It feels like it emulates a video game with appropriate visuals and sound effects, not to mention Savika's new Crazy Slots RNG arm. The episode ends with Victor healing Shimmered Up Huck with his newfound Hexcore powers, which had me very intrigued for Victor's Messiah arc. As much as I love that episode, I will say that it showed early signs of the season being rushed. Victor leaves Jace immediately after waking up. Echo and Heimerdinger teleport from the underground tree to Jace's topside laboratory, and Caitlyn's strike team is already in Son. It also felt sudden for Vi to fight Jinx already by the end of the first act, which made that fight feel less important than it should have. It is still an awesome scene, elevated by the epic Woodkid song To Ashes and Blood, which is easily my favorite song from the entire season. I don't think it beats Sting's What Could Have Been from Season 1, but to be fair, that song is perfect. It was nice to finally see Vi and Kate kiss, and sad to see them break up soon afterwards. The reveal that Mbessa played both Piltover and Son in order to turn Caitlyn into a vengeful dictator was pretty wild, not to mention terrifying. So was seeing Singed be all Frankenstein at the end of every episode. Intriguing stuff. Act 1 of Season 2 is overall really good, but the weakest act of the series thus far, just behind Act 2 of Season 1. It's more rushed than Season 1's third act, which was also a little rushed, but that was still the best act, featuring the likes of Echo vs Jinx and Jinx's Tea Party, which are absolute peak scenes. Going back to Season 2, Act 2 made the pacing even faster. If that wasn't enough, it sidelines the conflict between Piltover and Son, which is a shame since that's been the main conflict of Arcane. It is tackled in episode 4, but since the pacing is so fast, it comes off as rushed. There have been some criticisms of the show's reliance on music videos, and the most glaring example is the one that crammed Caitlyn's dictatorship into a half-baked montage. I would have preferred it if this was explored more in depth, but alas, it's basically forgotten about in the remaining episodes. Oh well, I enjoyed the wholesome bonding scenes between Jinx and Isha, and it was sad seeing Isha cry as she got carried away to safety while Jinx was fighting Warwick in what was an epic spectacle. I knew about the theory that Warwick is Vander, so I wasn't surprised when he recognized Jinx as Powder, but it was still a great cliffhanger. The montage at the start of the next episode is really good, but given how prominent emo Vi was in the marketing material, I expected that breakup phase to last longer. Also, it was weird how suddenly Jinx and Vi decided to team up, yet another example of just how rushed this season is. That said, I enjoyed this a lot. The back and forth between Jinx and Vi is so much fun, especially Jinx's hilarious comebacks. The flashback to their mother Felicia, Vander and Silco was very nice to see, and the transition from Vander coming up with the name Violet to Warwick hugging Vi actually made me ugly cry. I can't remember the last time I've done that, so well done Arcane. I adore Vander and his relationship to Vi and Powder, so seeing them reunite several years after him supposedly dying was too powerful, especially with What Have They Done to Us playing in the background. That family reunion is definitely one of my top 3 favorite moments of the season, and in my top 10 favorite scenes of the entire show. It's fascinating to see these characters interact with Victor in the next episode, and I love that he's adamant about saving Vander despite the effort that requires. The watercolor scene of Vander's memories is so good, enhanced by the emotional song Remember Me. Unfortunately, this episode also contains some rushed elements, particularly Vi and Caitlyn getting back together as soon as they meet again, and Caitlyn's whole corruption arc being swept under the rug. It is still a great episode, largely due to its ending, which is another one of my top 3 scenes this season. Everything goes to shit, Victor getting shot by Jace, Vander reverting back to Warwick, and Isha sacrificing herself to save Jinx. That scene is reminiscent of the masterpiece that is episode 3 of season 1. Definitely not as peak, but peak nonetheless. Victor's ending monologue goes so hard too, and foreshadows his dark development in Act 3. In spite of its missteps, I think this is my favorite act of season 2, and I enjoy it about as much as season 1's own middle act. Going into the final act of season 2, which is also the final act of Arcane, it was hard to imagine how it would be able to wrap up the remaining plot threads in a satisfying manner. And it didn't help that episode 7 spent all of its time in alternate realities. Even so, I think season 2, episode 7, Pretend Like It's the First Time, is my favorite episode of the season. Unlike pretty much all the other episodes, I don't find this one rushed at all, and that's because it narrows its focus. The multiverse concept may be overdone, but I just really enjoyed seeing Echo experience an alternate reality where Son is thriving, with the likes of Benzo, Milo, Clagger, Vander, and Silco still being alive, not to mention Powder being mentally stable. I like how this episode cuts between the utopia that Echo and Heimerdinger immerse themselves in, and the dystopia that Jay struggles through. It mostly remedied this season's underutilization of these 3 characters, although I do still think that Heimerdinger could have been used better. At least he got to flex a singing voice. The utopia isn't perfect, considering that Vi is dead, but otherwise, Echo would have really good reasons to stay here. However, Echo stays true to himself by finding a way to go back to his reality so that he can give it a better future. He's truly got a heart of gold, and it's nice to see him acclimate to this version of Powder and embrace her. The party scene where they dance together is another one of my top 3 favorite season 2 scenes. It's so wholesome, but also so tragic, considering both you and Echo know this won't last. The amazing French song that plays during it is similarly bittersweet, and the kiss they share is the cherry on top. I enjoy the romance between Vi and Caitlyn, but I'm honestly more invested in Echo and Powders after this episode. Echo and Jinx only have a few scenes together throughout the whole show, but they're always peak. Moving on, I enjoy episode 8, but the way it rushes towards the end of the show probably makes it my least favorite episode in all of Arcane. I feel fairly indifferent about Mel's story this season regarding the Black Rose. It is intriguing, but I fear her new powers might undermine her previous strengths of subtlety and cunning. The conflict between Piltover and Son also continues taking a back seat and is basically resolved by uniting their people against a common enemy, which might have worked hadn't it been executed so haphazardly. It was sad to see Victor sacrifice Skye along with his humanity, and sadder yet to see Vander's memories being burned away from Warwick. It's also heartbreaking to see the depressive state Jinx is in, but I like how her scene foreshadows her decisions in the finale, wanting to break the cycle by removing herself from the equation. At first, that sadly means committing suicide, but I love that Echo rewinds her attempts with his newfound time powers. I wish we got to see how Echo managed to talk Jinx out of it, but unfortunately, the scene got cut short, which describes pretty much every scene in this overstuffed series finale. There's so much happening in just 50 minutes, and I'm not even sure if a movie-length episode would have managed to conclude things in a satisfying manner, although it would have certainly helped. There are a lot of good scenes here, but they don't get enough time or prioritization to flourish, especially since the build-up has also been lacking. I usually love ending a story on an epic final battle, but it doesn't feel earned here, and it would have been far more interesting to keep the focus on the conflict between Piltover and Son instead of this half-baked apocalypse. I can't deny that the finale is entertaining to watch, having some of the greatest visuals I've seen, but I was wondering what the hell was happening for most of it, and it felt like the show sacrificed its nuance for spectacle. Basically, it became League of Legends. Oh well, I love seeing Echo continue to be the MVP of the season, being the key to defeat Victor's glorious evolution, and the final scene between Jace and Victor was surprisingly well done. The final scene between Jinx and Vi was also good, albeit a little contrived, and it also didn't hit as hard as it should have, but it does get better as you notice the little details and what Jinx's sacrifice ultimately means. As far as Vi knows, both her and Vander are dead, meaning she doesn't need to sacrifice herself for their well-being anymore, and can live happily ever after with Caitlyn. Jinx meanwhile is now free to leave her past misfortunes behind and start anew elsewhere, hence the ending shot of the blimp she always wanted to ride. Jinx was my favorite character of Season 1, and I'm happy to say that she's also my favorite character in Season 2, Echo being a close second. That bastard Singed got the best ending by ruining everyone else's. What a Chad. I am disappointed by some of the other character conclusions, particularly Savika, who randomly becomes a Piltover council member without even speaking a single word for half the season. Speaking of mutes, Isha is hardly brought up by Jinx or Vi after her tragic death, and Vi didn't have a single conversation with Echo, despite teaming up. Caitlyn's ending monologue feels a bit cheap, considering she was doing some heinous shit, but I guess Mbessa conveniently became the scapegoat for all that. I also don't care much for her last scene with Vi, which stinks since it's the very last scene of Arcane. Act 3 of Season 2 has its ups and downs, and while I love Episode 7, the breakneck pace of the very last episodes unfortunately makes this the worst act of the entire show. When it got revealed that Season 2 would be the final season of Arcane, I was surprised, but open-minded, considering how well Season 1 was handled. After having watched the season, however, it really should have been longer, either some more episodes or an additional season. I am aware that Riot had budget constraints, but since that's the case, I think the writers should have narrowed their scope. They play around with too many ideas in too little time, some of which being entirely new and getting in the way of pre-established ones. I do get that they wanted to prepare material for future League of Legends TV shows, which will hopefully pay off in the long run, but it's a shame that it comes at the expense of Arcane's overall quality. It used to be an unequivocal masterpiece, whereas now it's a flawed one. It is still one of the best TV shows, it's still one of my favorite shows, and I really like Season 2. But like my other favorite animated media texts of 2024, Arcane Season 2 is unfortunately too rushed to realize its full potential. It might make my list of favorites, but I assure you, if Season 2 was close to Season 1's quality, it would have been number 1 without question. I'm Arcadon, and hopefully, you'll see me next time!